Hello, my name is RosieRosie321 and today we're reading 3 scary stories. The stories in this video come from Reddit and online sources. These may be true, exaggerated, or completely fictional. Viewer discretion is advised. Thank you, and let's get straight into it. There is an ancient crumbling water house where the entire estate's water system was managed. Believe me, we thought it was a miracle how anything that old and manky could keep and pump out any water, but it did. It was made with bricks, with a black slate roof and iron doors, although at the time of this incident it was just a shadow of its former self, and didn't have any windows. The windows were all smashed in by generations of kids throwing rocks and stones at them. It was there where my mom and her siblings were. Kids played over the heath, and they all told us it spooked them and their mates as it did us. It was a really hot day one summer in the school holidays. The older boys were at home for some reason, and all the younger cousins, me included, were being little brats. So the boys said they would take us all blackberry picking to keep us quiet. Mama agreed, and gratefully, the boys were really responsible and mature at 16, 17, and 18. They babysat for us younger kids all the time, so we all knew the rules of staying close to the boys and doing what they told us. And so, a half hour later, everyone had their fruit baskets and were off. There were 5 of us younger kids. We were all really excited as blackberry picking was a great family favorite activity, and our Grand's blackberry pies were the best. Grand's house led directly onto the back of the heath. There was a fence with a gap at the end. One of my older cousins passed me through to the other, then lifted my tiny wheelchair over the fence. The other kids were through in seconds, and we were away again. On our way to our destination, the older boys told us spooky stories, as they always did, half because they liked scaring us, and half because we all used to beg them to. There was nothing more terrifying than a story from my cousin H or B. They were masters and so believable. We loved it. We all stopped talking when we came to the water house. Nobody ever dared to speak around or near the water house, not even the older boys. For something so mundane, it always looked, and still does, so eerie. There was a second fence to get through before we reached our beloved blackberry field, but this time, as we squeezed through the gap of the fence, we were all more somber as we remembered the old wives' tale / urban legend that we all knew about the water house. The story goes, once in the early 1960s, there was a gang of bank robbers. They were local to the area and were really nasty pieces of work. Their expertise was terrorizing bank customers and staff alike, before grabbing and shooting anything that moved. They did several jobs without getting caught, but they really messed up a particular job. I'm sorry, I lost my place. And a sweet 19-year-old trainee bank clerk was shot dead, and 5 more people were seriously injured. One of the gang was also shot dead, along with the nastiest member of the gang being seriously wounded in the crossfire. It is said that the remaining gang members escaped with just a few hundred and made their way over to the heath and hid out in the water house. It was new-ish at that time, and was a perfect hideaway for the murderers. There was a lot of contention and stress between the remaining gang. Months although it was never proven how the bodies of all 3 of the remaining gang members were discovered rotting away in water house 6 months later. A few years after the weird stuff and creepy noises started occurring near and around the water house, Mysterious, hairy figures were glimpsed moving stealthily amongst the pipes and wires. A dank, moldy, rotten smell, like aging river weeds, was always smelt around the area of the Waterhouse, and eerie wails and menacing murmurs could be heard day and night. In the late 70s, there was a spate of mysterious deaths of homeless people who had helped her over the heath, not too far from the Waterhouse. There was nothing to ever link the deaths to the Waterhouse, but the locals soon started giving the Waterhouse and surrounding area a wide berth because of the creepy history and dark reputation, and that left the Waterhouse abandoned and in disrepair. That's what we knew of the Waterhouse's dark history. That's why we were so wary and anxious to get away from it as quickly as possible. When we were all through the gap in the fence further away from the Waterhouse, us younger cousins built up enough courage to glance over at the building of ill repute before being rounded up by the older boys. A put me in my wheelchair again, and we set off to the blackberry field. We soon arrived at the field, where some other local kids we knew were already there, and we spent a nice afternoon picking and eating the juicy sweet blackberries and splashing in the river, and soon the sun was getting low and it was time for home. Our journey home was much like the one here. There, we were still bantering, laughing, and the older boys were still winding us up slightly, but being as it was getting later, we were feeling wearier and slightly subdued. When we reached the fence before the Waterhouse, the air felt slightly too close, like before a thunderstorm. The youngest of the 3 older boys got me out of my wheelchair so that B could lift it over the fence. The other kids were already on the other side of the fence with H and B. A suddenly said to his brother in a low, guarded voice, "Something moved at the back of there, bruv." B just looked at him sideways. Out of the boys, A was the most likely one to pull a stunt or wind anyone up for a laugh, but A was straight-faced. A said, "I'm gonna have a look," passing me through the B and squeezing past us all. "Wait up, A, we've got to..." Having put me in my wheelchair, B had moved forward towards his brother, and we all heard A shriek out in horror and disgust, and the 2 boys moved back quickly. H, having already taken me out of my wheelchair again, had told everyone to run, and we did, B picking up my tiny wheelchair, folding it up while running, A grabbing the other 2 kids' hands, and following B and H running with me on his shoulders, holding my other cousin's hands. We ran and ran. A kept saying, "Don't look back, don't look back." I did, but saw nothing. We didn't stop till we got to the fence, which leads back to the road on the estate, and we could actually see civilization again. We didn't stop till we got to the fence which leads back to the road on the estate, and we could actually see We were all completely exhausted, especially the older boys. Before it stepped through into the road, B, holding himself up by the railings, asked, "What did you see, A?" "Yellow eyes, hairy face," said A. All of us younger kids began to panic and scream, and H had to calm us all down. He said that we were safe and it would be alright, but we all wanted to get as far away from the Waterhouse as possible. When we got home, we all looked bedraggled and slightly nervy. Mama and my auntie noticed this and asked the boys what was wrong. H just said that we just got spooked by an old drunk man in the bushes looking for golf balls to sell, and as that was quite commonplace over the heath, Mama and my auntie just gave us kids a pep talk and hugged us. We never did tell how Mama or my auntie the truth about the yellow eyes and hairy face. We'll find out what it actually was, but us kids didn't go near the Waterhouse for a long time after. I recently started working for a carpentry business. I'm fresh out of high school, so I'm pretty much brand new to this type of work. One early morning, my boss had called me and told me to make my way over to one of the job sites we were at. Once I got there, he directed on me on what to do, and he was on his way. I was the only one at this specific house due to us being understaffed. 6 of us. Once he left, I took off my shoes and began walking down the steps, and when I heard what I sounded like panting in the basement, I figured the family had just had a pet somewhere down there, so I continued walking down the stairs. I got into the room that was unfinished and had all of our equipment and began cleaning buckets for mud when I heard a bark, but not just an ordinary bark. It sounded like a grown man imitating a bark, so I instantly assumed it was my boss who forgot something and was trying to scare me. I dropped myself and walked to the door and yelled his name to see if he was here. No reply. I was kind of getting a little creeped out, so I decided to leave the room I was in to make my way upstairs. But before I could, I heard that barking noise again coming from somewhere down in the basement. I went and checked one of the rooms down there, and when I see him that's the source of the noise, I got so scared. The way the eyes looked made me feel so uneasy. So uncanny the dog looked. It was a very large dog, almost like a grown man was hiding inside of a dog's skin. My eyes started watering up and I had chills everywhere. My blood still runs cold thinking about it. When I was 10, me and my grandpa were driving to a ranch in Mexico. It was 3:40 in the morning and we were driving on supposedly haunted road. My grandpa had a blue Ford pickup truck. Anyways, my grandpa and I were just making conversation. He then said, "This road is haunted. A lady stands on the side of the road asking for rides." So I got scared and started looking out the window. 40 minutes passed, the sun is still down. My grandpa keeps looking at his rearview mirror. I asked him what's wrong and he replied nothing. I then looked at the mirror and my heart drops and I'm just paralyzed in fear. I see a woman in a white dress with pitch black eyes in the back of our truck. My grandpa looks at the mirror once again and I'm guessing he sees it as well. He just slams on the brakes. We both just look at each other. We look at the mirrors and she was gone. Me and my grandpa addressed what happened and confirmed that we both saw her. We got out of the truck and we were moments away from falling into a deep ditch off the road if my grandpa hadn't slammed on the brakes. We could have been dead. Ever since, we never took that road. Scariest moment of my life.